for joining us today. We are just setting everything up. I am very excited to have our Central Coast team with us here today. Anna Johnson and Jason McCree and Anna Olson will be presenting on their project, and specifically recently, as you've seen probably with all of the great stories that went out and all of the pictures that we've been sending. A few weeks ago, they had their block party, which was a huge success, and so they will be presenting on that process. And hopefully those of you who will be doing any sort of outreach in the coming last few months of the service year can really learn a lot about their experience, and hopefully you all have come prepared with questions. So I will go ahead and mute myself and turn it over to the Central Coast team. If there are any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to either raise your hands and I will unmute you at the end, or you can just type in your questions and we will take care of those as well. Thank you for attending.
Hello?
It is all you.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for logging into the Central Coast member-led webinar. Today we'll be talking to you about our big service year event, the CivicSpark Block Party, Simple Steps for Energy Efficiency. Through this presentation, we'll discuss why we held this event, the planning process, the ups and downs, logistics, and some feedback and lessons learned. So the Central Coast team has been working on Climate Action Plan implementation. There are 8 jurisdictions in SLO County, each with their own Climate Action Plan. Before we even started our service year, our regional partner, the SLO APCD, identified 9 common measures found within each of those 8 caps and took a poll asking each jurisdiction to rank those 9 measures from their highest to lowest priority. The top 3 were small-scale on-site solar PV incentive program, energy efficiency outreach and incentive program, energy audit and retrofit program. And they all have similar subtasks within, with a heavy emphasis on outreach and education. And one of the measures also included hosting an event. So we thought, why not tie them all together and include aspects of each measure into one event. So we thought the planning process would go something like this, with first picking a location. Then once we had that decided, picking which day of the week would be best, which time of day would be best, and then how long do we want this event to be, 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, and we started planning from there. So we started by identifying our priorities, goals, and some initial ideas. We thought we'd hold a somewhat formal event, a workshop with speakers and demonstrations for home and business owners about do-it-yourself or low to no-cost energy retrofits and upgrades. And this idea steered us towards looking for a suitable venue that would be somewhat formal, bigger halls with mic capabilities and multiple rooms for speakers and demonstrations. This also meant we'd have to get people excited to come and lure them in somehow, maybe by providing some good food. We wanted to leverage the strengths of our existing community partners, include a car show to make it exciting through the nonprofit C5 based here at the APCD. We wanted to reach an audience less familiar or engaged with energy efficiency, make it interesting and interactive through demonstrations, and of course we wanted to provide good information through speakers and tabling, and all while keeping in mind why we were doing this in the first place, to tie it all back to CAP implementation. So our first choice was the San Luis Obispo Veterans Hall. There are a lot of events and workshops held here regularly, and it's a well-known spot in the community, so it seemed like a great place to start. The Vets Hall has 3 rooms, 1 large room, side room, and a sort of a lounge area. It's only a mile from downtown. It was free, and the multiple rooms would provide great space for having speakers and demonstrations and tabling. We then started to think about which day of the week would be best for this. Maybe early on in the week, a Monday, or should we do end of week Friday or Saturday? Our supervisor here at the APCD is named Erin, and she's working closely with us on every stage of the planning process, and she sort of let us know that they hadn't had good experience in the past with holding events on the weekends. So we eventually decided on having it on a Thursday because it's not quite the beginning of the week and not quite the end on Friday when people be burnt out or out of town on Saturday and Sunday. And there's also a major farmers market in SLO every Thursday, so people would be around. We went through a couple of different configurations of the rooms and where we'd have the speakers or consultations or panel discussions, which room would be best for having more of the display area type stuff, but doubts begin to arise, and we thought, what if people wouldn't show? What if these rooms were too big or too small? And how are we going to get the APCD to help us raise money to get food and speakers and everything? So basically, we started to doubt this location. And unfortunately, our speaker system isn't working to show you this video, but it's basically just a little funny thing. Our team member, Anna Olson, who's out of the office today, she has the most experience with event planning, so we tried to keep, all of us in the loop, whether we were in the office or not, with the developments of the planning process for this event. So this is just a video we took when we went and toured the Vets Hall in person. You can go ahead and play it, or we'll play it at the end or something. So we're just walking around, showing the size of the space and the lighting and the stage area and just different aspects of the room. So not that exciting of a video. It would have been more fun if the sound worked, but this would have been the little lounge area, maybe where we had some consultations or speaker series. They had those doors kind of separating the space for us, so we thought that could be good. But anyway, that was the Vets Hall. Our next choice we were looking at was the SLO County Public Library. This was a much smaller space to fill, which sort of resolved our worries about having a huge event and not being able to fill the room. It was also a lot closer to downtown, easily walking distance for anyone interested to, come over from the farmers market. It was also a free venue, so we stopped by one afternoon and checked out the room. It was definitely more manageable than the Vets Hall in terms of size, and it was also maybe too small. We were thinking, how could we do speakers and demonstrations and tabling in one room and deal with all the different, sound and conversations going on? There was a stage area, but we didn't know, who should we put up on the stage, or should we just not use that space? Will it be hard to get people to pull away from the farmers market and come to this event, or where would we be able to put the car show? You can kind of see there's some red curb and just scattered driveways, and it's on a corner, and it just wasn't looking like that great of a spot either. So started to think about our next option. We knew the Mission Plaza was a location downtown, kind of close by, where people had events, but that would totally change the event to being outdoors, and this would make it even more difficult to have a speaker series, especially with music blaring from the market. So basically, the farmers market kept coming up as an obstacle when we initially chose to hold our event on a Thursday evening because of the draw of the farmers market. So the idea finally came to the surface, and we decided to have a block party right at the farmers market, where we could probably get a whole street to hold our event on instead of one booth. But again, this totally changed the approach we've been taking with a more formal workshop speaker event to a block party, very casual. We realized we'd have to drop the whole speaker series idea, but it would provide an opportunity to reach a significantly larger audience through the foot traffic, especially our less energy conscious audience. Also, if we drop the speakers, we wouldn't have to worry about picking people and scheduling their presentation times and their topics and playing for audio, and overall we could have a more casual, inviting, free-flowing event without a strict timeline to follow. So the farmers market was also going to provide the best location for a car show. We ended up having a whole 300-foot street to put some cars on. So we knew we had to make this a special event and not just your normal tabling and people in chairs and brochures wanting to talk to you. And we'd also have to find a way to deal with those cons we have listed there, the application fee and, sharing our event with the farmers market. But all those cons seemed minor compared to the potential pros, so we contacted the Downtown Association and looked over the terms and signed ourselves up. And here's a little map of SLO area we're working in. On the top right, you have that rectangle. That's where the Vets Hall would have been with the big 3 rooms. The small red circle somewhere in the middle is the SLO County Library. We're getting closer to the downtown area, which is sort of outlined in yellow. That's the area that the farmers market takes up. And then we have our block party right there on Broad between Higuera and Monterey, right in the middle of all the action where veggies and barbecue and educational tabling comes together. So from here, I'll hand it off to Jason.
So like Anna was saying, some of the things that we, of course, had to think about were beyond just the day of the week, what day in the calendar we were going to pick. So SLO is a college town, so Cal Poly and Cuesta kind of dominate some of the things going on as far as, we didn't want all the college kids to be gone. We wanted to avoid the Memorial Day weekend. We didn't want it to be too close to finals. We didn't want everyone to go on summer vacation. So we had to kind of pick a sweet spot in there. It was either going to be before Memorial Day or after. We ended up picking after because there was another large event, a home show that was going on, so we couldn't really do much about that. Of course, we needed to plan for 10 to 20 vendors. Some of them had trailers. They all only had a certain amount of space. Then on top of all that, we only had a 30-minute window to get everyone in, all of the cars, all of the trailers, all the electric vehicle cars that were staying, everyone set up, and then everything else out except for the showcase cars within 30 minutes, all allowing for a 20-foot fire lane when they were all set up after that 30 minutes because of the Downtown Association's rules. So it was a very kind of crazy orchestrated chaos that was going on for about 30 minutes. And of course, some of the most difficult things is getting everyone to commit, getting sponsors, getting your advertising out, when to send save the dates, when to send reminders, when the ads would run, and coming up with our logo. I'm sorry. The sponsors were difficult for us, especially because we couldn't move forward with the budget until we kind of had a lot more of things figured out. So, things changed from the Veterans Hall, which included food, AV, audio, visual, any of the other contingencies coming up, if anything was needed at the car show. But mainly the food and the AV were really, really costly. We were getting some estimates that were pretty high. And then that all changed when we thought about the library. They provided audio and audio from what I believe. And then the food kind of changed, maybe trying to compete with the farmers market, which also, as you saw in the picture earlier, has a lot of food vendors, wasn't the best plan. And then ultimately we ended up with a block party, so we trimmed our budget down to paying for the application and the advertising. So our budget changed a lot in what we were thinking. We initially thought about newspapers, radio, and TV ads, and some of the cost for those was just prohibitive. So ultimately, we picked May 28th. We picked Broad and Higuera. There wasn't too much deliberation on what side street we wanted to pick. It was a good location, as you saw on the map. So we picked the location. We got the date. We picked a name that was simple. It fit with the heavy branding that we've been doing in all of our outreach events. Since we started our Simple Steps flyer, which I think you guys saw a long time ago, we've been using the same color schemes, the same font, the same kind of name, and the same idea that it's just about energy efficiency. It's not about climate. It's not about the climate action plans. It's not about global warming. It's just about saving money and saving energy. We identified key partners, and we started to form the event in earnest. So thinking about where people could go, who we want to invite first, who we want to get committed first, where they're going to go, who the second round are, who are our last minute kind of let's send out an invitation. Maybe these people will fit in if we don't have enough booths there. So we just kind of started throwing everything together once we got all of those things sort of figured out. And of course, the map is kind of a huge issue you'll see later, but once we had all of these ideas, we could start to begin to roughly sketch it. But based on getting the partners nailed down, it changed frequently. So, and again, the difficulty of it is it can't really be understated. Some people, we sent multiple emails, we called, we went in person to get them to agree. And that's really where the difficulty comes from. They were not paying for anything, but arguably to them, they weren't necessarily getting that much from just another event. They have to have staff for it, they have to have materials for it, they have to bring their own table, they have to get everything there. And part of the requirements, again, from the Downtown Association, which runs the farmers market, was a liability release waiver, so insurance in case anything happened. But we took that as our official confirmation for the attendance. If you signed the release waiver, then you were signed on. We assumed you were coming. And that was kind of the key thing for us, getting people to basically sign on the dotted line. Of course, it wasn't any type of commitment. It was just a release of liability in case anything happened. No one had to pay for it. That's the real difficulty there, building those partnerships and relying on the relationships that you've built with those people or groups or anything like that. We sent out 2 reminders to the mailing list that we've kind of cultivated from some of our previous events and outreach and that type of thing. We sent it out a week prior and 24 hours before. So just a simple kind of very similar to a lot of the things, a lot of the other materials we have, the uniform branding and very simple headlines, bullet points at the top. So it wasn't a complicated, verbose type reminder. It was very simple, straightforward, straight to the point. I'm sorry, those reminders were for our vendors, but we sent out maybe 2 or 3 more email blasts to our mailing list. And you can see to the right is our ad in the local paper here in the Tribune, and it was $800 for about a quarter of the page. Move the mouse off of it. We also had an ad in the New Times, which is another publication, an electronic ad on Visit San Luis Obispo, which I think is run by the Chamber of Commerce, the Tribune ticket, and the Tribune weekly ad. So we're in a few different forms of the Tribune, as it changes with some of the advertisements or the different editions on the day of the week. So we got some ads out there. And so we were able, again, and this kind of falls back onto the relationships that we built, we were able to get about 20 vendors there in some form or another. So this ranged from Cuesta, one of the local colleges, to a barber shop that was just out in Morro Bay that we actually didn't hear about until that long before. So, and of course, the larger logos, Empower, the SoL County APCD, and the Central Coast Clean Cities Coalition were our main sponsors and some of our key partners in both the project and in the block party. Empower, if you guys aren't familiar, I think some people in Southern California might be, but it's a county program that basically helps homeowners take advantage of the rebates that are presented by Energy Upgrade California. They also work with local contractors to, they'll come out and do a free energy assessment, and they'll work with contractors to get people to sign up and actually do a whole audit. So a larger scale type of thing of the home to determine, where homeowners are losing money, where they can upgrade. But we thought we got a pretty wide range of groups and people to come out. We got 2 of our jurisdictions to agree to come out. We had some of the environmental clubs. We had the Build Smart trailer, which was a really awesome thing as it turned out. our regional supervisor is on the board of the Green Building Coalition, which is just kind of getting up and running, absorbing another group, and they were unsure about that. There was a lot of back and forth, but they got it there. We got it staffed, and it turned out pretty good. And we got PG&E to be there, which was kind of a key thing to getting the utility support. So within the block party, we wanted to make sure that we were doing things that were interactive and fun and interesting, and not just a street with some tables and maybe a couple cars, and that's really it. So the water catchment is kind of a divergence from what we've been normally talking about, but from our outreach events, from tabling, people would always come up to us and they say, oh, we do things on energy efficiency, or what can I do about water? Water. That's what kept coming back up. So we came up with the idea, if we want to have a giveaway more than just some of the stuff we've been giving away from the APCD, why don't we kind of work to address that need and expand the scope of our project a little more to some of the most pressing issues. So the APCD solicited the buckets, solicited donations from Home Depot and the local farm supply store for the buckets for us to give them out. And we had the idea that we don't really just want to give them away, and it would be kind of difficult if we only had one type of thing for them to do to get it. So it's kind of a way to make sure people circulated through and they visited some of our key sponsors and partners. We came up with the passport, which you see below the bucket. It was just a simple quarter sheet that had those 4 boxes. So C5, the Central Coast Clean Cities Coalition, and the 3 other nonprofits there. We send people to them. They asked a question. If they answered the question right or wrong, they still got a stamp. They ostensibly talked to the people there and learned a little more about the organization. And then they brought it back to us, and then we gave them a bucket. So it turned out kind of serendipitously that the Clean Air Ambassadors were all the way at the end, and Grid Alternatives were kind of in the middle. So people went pretty much throughout the whole street to get this free bucket. And C5 held the car show, if we hadn't made that clear before. So they got a chance to kind of hopefully look at some of the cars that were there too. And as you can see, these aren't as good of an example, but they kind of follow the same font, the same color scheme as our simple steps, and some of the layout ideas. So yeah, each of the water catchment, or each of the buckets had that a blue cutout talking about the water catchment system, and of course who donated it to us. So the showcase idea from the Climate Action Plan goals, within the energy audit measure, there was a subtask that was have a week-long showcase of successful businesses and homeowners in the jurisdiction that made retrofits to their home or did this or that. So we thought, since we opened up the scope, we should probably, of the event, we could open up the scope of the showcase because there were some similar things in the other measures. So we just decided to invite some of the people from the community that we knew had done some really cool things with their home or their business, and just kind of get them to come out and give them a stage, but also try and point people to them and recognize them for what they were doing. So we invited a member of the APCD who had done a really interesting passive attic ventilation. We invited a local architect who had done some really interesting stuff with passive solar. He had been off-grid for quite a while until he got a Tesla, which was in the showcase, but he powers that with solar panels. We invited a local hardware store owner who also, on top of doing things at his home, he has a hotel that he owns, which he did a whole host of things to, with tankless water heating systems, only low flow shower heads, excessive almost insulation in the hotel. So kind of a model, but when we thought about the showcase, we didn't want to just have these people, hanging out and doing whatever. We kind of wanted to make it inviting and make it feel like you were coming into your friend's living room and you're sitting down. Maybe they got like a new TV, so they're telling you about their new TV, but instead of the TV, it's the house that they're telling you about or the business. We wanted to kind of replicate that type of feeling, with what people had done in their homes or their businesses, and get people interested, but make them comfortable and make it a relaxed and casual setting. So we thought that the showcase would kind of turn out a little more like a comfortable, home with the light and everything like that, and a man with a machine. Anyway, what it actually turned out to look like, not exactly it. We had some kind of major space issues that came out, and we weren't able to plan for some of the contingencies that came up. But we still got people there, and we still provided a space for the homeowners. And there you can see the SLO County APCD employee Andy, and of course myself, my teammates, and Kristen. And so, and to the right, you can see the sign that was on the ground there, which again follows some of the same branding that we talked about, but just kind of gives people an idea of who they're talking to, what what they had done to their home or to their business, what they can talk to them about, what they can come up and speak to them about. So, and we have a carpet, and then I broke the light bulb to the lamp, so we didn't have a lamp, but it just sat there anyway. It didn't work. But, so another one of the issues that we had was gathering volunteers and assigning tasks. So that day, who was going to do what, and how are we going to get everyone, set up? What if people needed this? What if people needed that? So like we said, the APCD had the donations, or they facilitated the solicitation of donations, but also the sponsorship that we got from some of our partners for the ads and for paying for the street. And of course, we had to-do list. We tracked all of that, and we needed to decide, who's going to do what task. One of the biggest problems was getting volunteers for the Build Smart trailer, which I mentioned before, mainly because the Build Smart trailer hadn't been used extensively before, so there wasn't too much information on actually what to say in it. And it turns out that there was like one sheet, and it needed updated anyway, but we needed people to be there to staff it, but also to talk about what the things are going on inside. Of course, getting volunteers and figuring out who could help us and where they could go was another huge thing. And the layout, I mean, we talked about it before, but it kept coming up. It's a huge thing when your event is based on where people are. That's a key thing to it. So being flexible with that and being mindful of that. And here you can see our workshop to-do list, and that was a couple of weeks. That was a week or two before. That wasn't even some of the more tasks that we had. So, and then the day of details. So we had some last-minute cancellations. So 2 booths and 1 car, which kind of changes the makeup of the street. Again, going back to the layout and the difficulty with that. We got there about an hour early, or half an hour early, to kind of tape the street out and get an idea of where the booths would go, who would go where. So when people could start coming in, we would already have their spaces laid out, and the roads close a little early. Excuse me. So cars can't get in, but as Kristen can attest, we were out in the street without reflective vests, taping the streets, which we don't necessarily recommend, but and of course the layout changed again. We initially had thought that the layout we had worked, but with the cancellations in the cars, we decided, and some shading on the street, which is where a solar trailer was going to go, we decided that we moved it and it would work better that way. And of course we worked with our volunteers and whoever else was there to facilitate the setup, to make sure everyone got in, to make sure everyone was safe, and to make sure everyone got out within half an hour so that no one got ticketed, no one got cited for the fire lane violation, anything like that. And if we didn't mention it before, the layout was very incumbent upon having a 20-foot fire lane down the street at any point in time. The Downtown Association was very serious about it, and apparently in the past they'd been cited for it numerous times, so it was a very serious thing. It was not a joke. And of course, safety is not a joke. To the right, you can see our little office and a working light bulb and lamp. All of the buckets that we gave out, to the left and above the buckets, one of the key games that we have, all of the things that we needed to get from that room downtown and into the, where they belonged. And that's just on our end. That's not even, everyone else. This is all just our supplies and our type of things that we had. So I alluded to it earlier, but the change in the map, it doesn't look like it's that significant of a change, but if you look at the scale, that moving this trailer to this side is that's a pretty big thing. I mean, it changes the layout pretty significantly, and it changed what was going on behind the restrooms, so kind of a big deal. And of course, we taped some things off a little bit wrong at first, so we had to go back. Luckily, it was before anyone was there and anyone was ready to set up, even though some people were there way too early. So it was a changing thing. We had to change that on the fly. No one was there to set up and kind of make that more difficult. But yeah, the layout and flexibility were key. So some of the lessons learned. The more fun the event is, the better the turnout is.
We learned that we definitely had to be prepared for last-minute changes for any events we do in the future.
Flexibility and vision is critical. We started from a vets hall, a very formal event with speakers and consultations, and we changed it into something that was more of a community event and more fun and had a lot of different scope.
We learned that it's hard to have a showcase as we had planned in such an informal setting. We had ideas about who we wanted to be there, those 4 participants, but getting them to, the event was 6 to 9 p.m. and we didn't, like, should each person be an hour or 45 minutes? Can we get them to just show up for that exact amount of time, pack up their stuff, and then go? So basically, in the future, we'll have to be a little more strict with how we set up that sort of a booth.
And we needed to work on the booth in general. The spacing was tight because we had some contingencies that we didn't plan for, unfortunately. Kind of how it felt, how we got people there, how we displayed some of the information, the fact that it was unfortunately all men, and the fact that it didn't really have its own designated booth. We had a trailer behind it to provide solar power for some of the things, but not everyone took advantage of the digital projector or computer and screen rather. And again, the spacing was cramped, and it was sort of a later idea, so we didn't get it together as well as some of the other parts of the block party, but yeah.
We learned that we need to plan for booths needing more than their allotted space. We had, almost to the inch, everything mapped out with, you get no more than 8 feet, and you get no more than 10 feet, and stay out of this 20-foot fire lane going down the middle of the street and all this stuff. We had the dimensions of all the trailers involved, but it just turns out, trailers have these tongues that they're being pulled on, and that would stick into the next person's space, and therefore their 10 feet were gone, and they were a sponsor, and they were not happy about that. So basically, we need to plan, maybe not to the inch, and allow a few extra feet in the future.
We unfortunately were kind of upstaged by a water forum the same day that we didn't even hear about until maybe a week in advance. So we probably could have communicated with the city better, but I'm not sure that they would have really changed that for us. But making sure to communicate very clearly with the cities and the sponsors to make sure there are no other events and make sure everyone can make it. So that was, I think, just a circumstantial thing.
Yeah, we looked at community calendars way ahead of time to make sure, but this just popped up last minute. So another lesson we learned, we're going to need more lighting for after sunset. We had done farmers markets 2 weeks before at the Thursday market just to check out, how the turnout is, how the lighting is, and it's getting into summer, so the sun's out till 8 p.m. or something, which would have been good for our solar trailers, but turns out the last hour from 8 to 9 is just as, bumping as an hour as the rest of the market. So it would have been nice to utilize our lamp or the little disco ball we had or some of the other lights, just to, because we were on a side street, we sort of turned into a dark side street that maybe people stopped going down. So maybe more lights after sunset in the future.
And of course, Kristen and Aaron did a good job of taking pictures, but we probably should have had a designated picture taker to make sure that, that's a funny word, to make sure that everyone had a picture of their booth, that we knew that we wanted some specific things that maybe Aaron or Kristen didn't know, maybe we didn't communicate, or maybe only we would know that we would want a picture of that specifically. So we got some great pictures, but it always helps to have someone whose whole job is that, and to make sure that we, that you have too many pictures and you have to choose rather than just having enough.
We learned that it's hard to keep people from packing up and leaving early, and even human blockades can be threatened. So the Downtown Association is strict, as we've mentioned, about the setup time, between 5:30 and 6, and then also no one's allowed to take down before 9. The streets are closed off, so cars are literally not allowed to move until after 9 and things are cleared up and people aren't running the streets. But despite those rules, people want to pack up around 8:30 or 8:45, and I think our team did pretty well at letting people, communicating the rules to every table. But the head of the Downtown Association did come by and say, look, since you guys are a special event, you're a side street, we're a little flexible with your takedown. So people started packing up, and we made sure no cars were leaving our street. But we did have to sort of stand in the way of some of the few that were inching towards us. But basically, we held until 9. We did our job.
And getting the press to pick up on the event. Unfortunately, despite buying ads in their paper, no one picked up on our press release. No one came and wrote an article about it. Again, that kind of goes back to the water forum at the same time. But yeah, I'm not sure what exactly we could do to improve on that, but that was kind of a thing that didn't work out that well.
We learned that Annas love lists and list making and multiple lists and crossing off, your to-dos.
And I learned that Teslas are really fun to drive.
And planning ahead and being thorough makes for a very low-stress, successful event. We had Kristen was using the clicker almost the whole night, and we ended up clocking in, I think, 575 people that turned onto our street. So overall, it was a major success, despite some spacing and cancellations.
And these are some feedback and quotable quotes that we got. Of course, the Central Coast CivicSpark team is the best. Some anonymous person. Yeah. We're not going to read them for you, but we'll. Francisco is the intern that works with C5, and he organized a lot of some of the cars showing up. But a little different was actually we solicited like 3 or 4 of the cars that came. We got them there, so that was a little different for C5. Usually they do that pretty much entirely.
There's one more on there.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. And of course, we want to thank our supporters and everyone who worked with us. That happened quick.
But thank you, everybody. We couldn't have done it without all of your help.
And now our room is much less empty, or much less full. There's less buckets. So just looking at our little office.
And this was just because
there are buckets everywhere. And we have a video. Unfortunately, you can't hear the sound, but we'll send out a link and you guys can kind of get the full experience. But
it was supposed to be a super cheesy Green Day Time of Your Life montage, but this one's, block party of our lives. So we'll just go ahead and let you watch this and enjoy. Okay, so that was that. Does anyone have any questions for us?
That was fabulous, Anna and Jason. Thank you so much for that. Some round of applause from my end. I've had just a few questions come in, and anyone else who has any questions, please keep on typing them in or sending them to me or raising your hand. But to start you off, how did you select the partners you wanted to work with? And for those who you didn't already maybe have a relationship with, how did you broach the invitation or start to build that relationship?
Well, from the beginning of the service year, you know, we're housed at the APCD, so they were an automatic partner. And then C5 is a nonprofit here, so again, they were sort of an obvious partner. I believe Empower is part of what funded the CivicSpark Central Coast, right? Yeah. So again, another obvious partner that we've worked with at tabling events, and they tie right into the climate action plans that we're working on. So those are the obvious ones. In terms of all the others, you know, that slowly just developed over time. You're you know, through Earth Day events or other tabling events, like, oh, maybe we should get some college clubs here. Oh, we're doing rebates and financing stuff. We should get some people who finance for green building projects like the Mortgage House. Who else?
Yeah, a lot of it too was word of mouth, and again, relying on the APCD. Some of the people who have been here for a while, you know, they knew people in the community, or you know, they knew who to talk to, and kind of that type of thing. And I mean, we did a good bit of Googling and just searching on our own, thinking about you know, who else to invite. But a lot of it was those partners that we had talked to. They either directed us in the right direction to someone else, or they knew who to talk to if we hadn't you know, already met them. In terms of the invitations, we had pretty much a standard invitation that we sent out to all of the participants, or the more formal invitation. So that was something that we all worked on collaboratively, and just we basically laid out, you know, what CivicSpark was, what we were doing in the county, what our vision of the event was. So we kind of had a vision statement, more or less, or somewhat of a description, focusing a lot on the community aspect of it, because that's what we really wanted to focus on. and we just sent that out, maybe with some tailored things at the end for certain people. So Empower, like we mentioned, has a list of contractors that are approved to operate in their program. So we wanted one of them to bring the blower door test out. So that was one of the things that we specifically stated in that person's invitation. And he did show up and he brought the blower door test, which was awesome. But yeah, I mean, as far as invitations, that's kind of what we did. If it was in person, we would still bring an invitation or get an email and email it anyway, just in case we missed something or we didn't, we forgot to explain something. But yeah, I mean, in person, it was just more of a colloquial thing and just kind of try and lay it out and be personable.
We brought save the dates to some of those more casual invites. We would, just keep our eyes out for organizations in the community that would may be relevant. And we go to them and just bring a save the date, bring a business card, tell them about CivicSpark, tell them about their event, and basically convince them why they were a perfect fit for it. And, this is a free opportunity for you to come to this event and promote whatever it is you're doing. So basically we did some email stuff, some calling, and some in-person, and just keeping our eyes out and talking with people here at the APCD.
Kristen, do we still have the screen, right?
Yep, you do.
Okay, cool. This one's fun. Oh, this one's fun. This is the save the date that we brought. I hope you guys can see it. So yeah. So we would bring this with us. We forgot to put it in the PowerPoint.
Great. Another question, sort of working with some of the partners. You mentioned the budget a few times and getting the buckets and some of the other pieces and things like the ads that had price tags on them. How did you get support to spend that money since you couldn't fundraise yourself?
Basically working through Erin. We have weekly meetings with her as our supervisor here at the APCD, so we talk every week about the ideas and how the event planning was moving along, and if we needed money for something, which was usually her or their graphics person would reach out. I don't know if I misunderstood the question, but was it basically how did we get Erin to get those donations and financing for us, or?
Yeah, I'm guessing whoever wrote that is more so thinking, as everyone's having challenges in all of the different regions because they might want to do something, but it takes money and that you're not allowed to fundraise. So how do you go about getting the buy-in for maybe someone else doing that fundraising for you? And it sounds like maybe it was easier for you because it was already expected.
And Erin manages the outreach division of the APCD, so the event, I think, for her made a lot more sense. It didn't require as much buy-in, but when we first initially thought about it, the event in general, having that kind of space and having the location, or I should say the block party, getting on Higuera Street for a regular Thursday farmers market is like $35, $40, and that's just having a booth, mixed in with a lot of other booths throughout the street. So providing that space for a vendor for free was a value. So I mean, the event in general, attending was a value for the vendor, but getting into advertising on top of all that and being on some of the signage and that type of thing, that was communicated effectively. I guess Erin already knew it, but it was also kind of incumbent in our conversations. So that provided that value and the reason to be able to solicit money. We were providing something for our partners. It wasn't like they were just coming out and doing whatever. They were getting tangible benefits from it that we kind of, it was either made clear through our conversations or what we thought, what we said to Erin, how we presented it, that it was made clear that way.
And maybe for people who don't have as convenient of a connection, a funding source, maybe I would just suggest looking to your partners or whoever it is you're working on for CivicSpark, whoever your regional partner is or other groups that you're working with, other nonprofits, maybe have a meeting early on if you're going to be event planning, like how much money are we going to need for this, and how could we work with you to sort of do a fundraising event, since as AmeriCorps we have these restrictions.
Yeah, and when we got the buckets, each bucket, even if it was a Home Depot bucket or a Farm Supply bucket, Home Depot was orange, Farm Supply was white, each of them had both logos in it. So I mean, it's that type of thing too with donating or fundraising that way. Always having the sponsors' logos on there. That's a you may not think much of it, but for some people, you know, seeing that logo reminds them that that particular person or business, whatever, provides that service, and that I think that the businesses value that and the nonprofits value that a lot. So.
Excellent. Any other questions, last minute questions? If you have any, please type them in. I think that is all that I have at this point of time.
One little last thing I'll throw in there is we just had that project management training a few days ago, and it was kind of fun watching that even after our event, because we were kind of sitting there feeling like, oh, we're kind of already agile experts. A lot of that sort of sounded relevant to what we had just gone through, and we were sort of impressed with ourselves, like, oh, we did that, and we did that, and it just felt like pretty organized, and a lot, you know, I think we owe that to each other, and you and Aaron and Rob and everybody in CivicSpark that's sort of helped. So just tying that back to your management training.
Wonderful. Well, I'm glad that that was useful, although maybe not the most timely for you to implement the lessons before the event. But I will again say this event was absolutely fantastic to attend and to get to volunteer at. It was a lot of fun, and just all the way down the block, seeing how engaged the people who were walking through, and there were residents of SLO, there were residents of the county who were just coming in for the farmers market. There were a ton of people visiting, which was surprising. We had multiple people from out of country who were there for the event, and just seeing how excited they were to get a bucket or to get one of the light up pins and to go down and say, hey, this is the answer that or this is the question that I answered correctly. All of those, it was a really refreshing event and really exciting. So hopefully all of those of you who joined us today got something out of this and can take this and implement some of these lessons learned for your own events. And thank you again, Anna and Jason, for all of your hard work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.